4.5 years ago, Thunder Bay hosted a massive pro-life conference called All Points North. This conference hosted huge pro-life speakers and was filled with information, hope about the future, and fellowship. For me, this conference was one that cemented my position as a pro-life person and had me hooked for more. At the time, I was a grade 9 student who was on the fence of the issue, and I was waiting for someone to pull me over to one side with logic, facts, and science. At this conference, that had happened. I am so glad that I was able to hear those speakers talk about the truth of abortion and about all pro-life areas. It is with my personal connection with All Points North Conference that I am very excited to have someone that spoke at this conference speaking to us today. I can still remember her talk to us that day as she showed us the picture of her mother in a very moving pro-life ad that they have designed, or when she held up old newspapers that had stories about life and development of the child in the womb. 4.5 years later, this is her second time to Thunder Bay. Currently, she is the Executive Director of Alliance for Life Ontario and President of Guelph Right to Life. I could not be more pleased to introduce our speaker for our 40th annual AGM. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Jakki Jeffs.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, I love being called wonderful before you've heard me, because I'm not quite sure that's the definition you'll have after. And I hope I don't wear you out, and I certainly hope that I don't cause you any type of depression, because what I'd like to do today is to show you what we're a part of. I've just actually written to our groups across Ontario and explained to them that I'm sending them a report out next week, just to let them know that I don't sit in my office with my feet up. Because, we don't hear much from each other sometimes, and sometimes I'm engrossed in research, and so the emails aren't as frequent. But there's such a lot going on. But you have what is so necessary here, that I can see at least, to keep you growing and fighting this cause. And believe me, we're in a war. And I know people these days don't like that language, but we need to understand that we're in a war. We need to know what we believe, and we need to be able to fight for it in all the best ways of that word, and not be ashamed of what we stand for. Joe, I'd just like to say to you, your message about the media, I've challenged on a few occasions, and I just wanted to raise a couple after I heard you say that. In the National Post a few months ago, there was, I think it was half a page given to the fact that a horse fell down a ditch. And I'm sorry the horse fell down the ditch. And it was out in BC, and for some reason they couldn't get the poor horse out, and the horse died. But that was given half a page in the National Post. 300 babies die every day in our country that we know of. There are more, but the statistics that we have, killed by abortion, that is nowhere reported. In my local paper, and now this business shouldn't have done it, but anyway, he took a whole swathe of trees down because he'd got some other buildings he wanted to put on. Well, I live in Guelph, and we have a university, and you're going to see where I am now. We're so green, it drives you mad. I mean, I'm sorry. We worry about every type of mollusk under the sun. So, of course, we had an endangered bird's egg was found crushed on the site. And once again, please don't take it that I don't care. But as I said to one student, he said to me, how do you know that trees don't scream when they're cut down? I said, well, I haven't heard it yet. But should you find that to be true, and we've stopped killing unborn babies, then I'll come and help. Right? But anyway, going back to this, so we have this massive great thing that this contractor was fined $3,000, and all in the paper, like, isn't it dreadful, isn't it bad, don't go to him, don't have him build anything, for crushing an endangered bird's egg. And I wrote to the paper and said, it's so strange that we understand that the egg is the bird, but we don't understand that the embryo is the human, right? Is the person. It's just unbelievable. But anyway, I didn't really mean to start with that, but you spurred me with that, Joe. And I always prepare much too much. I sometimes use PowerPoints, but today I just wanted to do just a sharing with you. And I had to learn a bit before I came up here, and so I did a little bit of looking into Thunder Bay. And you know that the whole of Ontario is sort of separated for health reasons under those local health integrated networks. And so you actually belong to the northwest one. And so I looked at that. And from other reports that I have, it gives you statistics on the rate of abortion, the numbers of abortion. And I just wanted you to get a sense, if you didn't know already, and forgive me if you do, the abortion rate across our province is between 0.9 and 1.2 for every 100 women of childbearing age. So that's between 15 and 44. You come in at 1.1. So you're not the lowest, but you're not the highest for rates of abortion. When we look at abortions for every 100 live births, there are 37 across the province for every 100 live births, 37 abortions. You have one of the lowest rates, 18. There are 18 abortions for every 100 live births here in this particular area of yours, which is still not something to be proud of, obviously, but something you're doing is keeping that down. Because like the rate is the same everywhere, and the number of abortions is the same. So something that has been done over the years here is keeping that number down, and I congratulate you for that. And I was interested to find that the large native community that you have here too. I mean, you have 20% of the Aboriginal peoples are here in your area, and I know you don't need me probably to tell you that. But you also have the youngest age of mothers in the whole of the province. And I was so graced today to be with the new birthright that is, well, it's not a new birthright, you've had birthright here for years, but they had a meeting this morning to get new volunteers to put more life into that wonderful ministry. And I would ask you to pray for them. And if you have any extra money, sorry, I'm always after money. They need a new sofa. They have a tiny little office that needs a partition so that they can do proper pregnancy support counselling, and then not, be in the main office. It's a very, very small office. But they now have about 8 volunteers that are going to be coming on board with them. And you can see God working in that. Like He's just putting life back into that. So they need very, very much support from you. But what I was going to say about the native community, they were saying to me that there's such a low rate of abortion amongst the native young women. I mean, they're the ones that have their babies. And I said, well, maybe we need to bring them in to teach us, those of us that think we're so knowledgeable and so, universitied and all these other things. Maybe we need to know something different from that community. So I was sort of very interested to hear that and be with them this morning. And if you didn't know that, it's a cause for great hope, as are you, because as I said and then didn't finish my sentence, and you'll know that as I go through, you've got young people active, which is unbelievable. And you're trusting them. You can see that because you're not blocking their involvement in the leadership, which is absolutely tremendous. The one thing I wasn't going to add is you've obviously got good stomachs, as Joe has told us about their pies, and you have a great sense of humour, and you need all of those things to be committed and hang in with the work that we have to do. because sometimes it's, I go home and you cannot hang your head. You cannot hang your head. You just have to find more ways of getting your message out. Now, I know that you've changed, or things have changed here as far as your medical community is concerned, but I tried to do, because up until they stopped allowing us to have these figures for abortions in our province, we managed to get them. So I have figures from 1975 through 2003. And I know, as I say, it's changed here, but I've got them for Thunder Bay, Mackellar, and Thunder Bay, Port Arthur General. And from, she keeps forgetting it, 75 to 2003 at Thunder Bay, Mackellar, there were 5,756 babies killed at that hospital. And at Port Arthur, 9,903. So, in a whole lot of ways, you have a lot to do. We have a legacy of not supporting life in Thunder Bay within that medical community. And so it needs a lot of prayers, and it needs an awful lot of stamina to just keep fighting when we have a government that is being so undemocratic as to not allow us to get those statistics anymore. But if you have any type of a witness outside of the facility, and I apologize, I don't know the name of your new
Thunder Bay Regional.
Thunder Bay Regional. Pray for them. Pray for them every day that God will just open their hearts to support life and not take it. Anyway, that's my orange binder for you. Now watch out, you've got this one. Ignore it. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have a question. Are these doctors, are they allowed to refuse to do abortion?
Of course.
They are, right?
Absolutely.
So it's not like they're being pushed. Because there was a story about the nurses here at the hospital. They were being
told to do it.
Yeah, they had to assist or whatever.
Yeah. See, it's different with physicians. There's absolutely, if you go onto the Canadian Medical Association website, even they will say, no physician should be forced into performing an abortion. They say they should refer, but I know physicians that say, then that makes me party to it, so I can't do it. Sadly, we don't have, our conscience legislation for other medical professionals is not as good. And so we absolutely need legal help with that for conscience protection. They're going to fight it. I've just been dealing with a nurse in Toronto who went on her shift at the high-risk unit in the hospital. She walked in and she was handed a little baby, nothing on him, and asked to take him to the morgue. This is just about 9 months ago. And she sort of turned, he wasn't covered or anything, and he moved. And so she flew to the doctor and said, he's still breathing. And the doctor turned to her and said, take it to the morgue. And so she carried that little one, he took his last breath in her arms, to the morgue. This is what the trouble is, how do you get stories like this? Because they're afraid of losing their jobs. None of us want to be in the position where we're going to get fired, but they're out there. So we need conscience protection for our other medical professionals. But even if you go back years ago, we have, I'm such a pack rat for history, and I have a letter where the Minister of Justice, John Turner, actually states that no doctor will be forced to perform or be involved with abortions. We will never pay for it. Hospitals do not need to have a facility. And even today, your regional centre does not have to provide abortions should that board say they don't want it. They don't. I think they provide up to 12 weeks. I think that they will kill the children here in this particular area. But we have to get more knowledgeable about that, and we have to go make presentations, especially when we know how abortion hurts women, right? So I'll just start with my little quote I was going to start with, and it's, "Freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor, it must be demanded by the oppressed." And that's Martin Luther King, and I think we need to be remembering that very, very much in all that we do. Now, I don't just have one book here, I have two. Sorry, this just helps my little brain think. And as I go through, I'm going to do this because I think we need to have a bit of fun about things. These are things I owe my mother. My mother taught me to appreciate a job well done. She said, "If you're going to kill each other, do it outside. I just finished cleaning." Anyway, that's the first one. And I know that we are in a human rights association, and I absolutely and utterly believe that. But I also know that most of you here today are probably Christian. And I just wanted to start with just a little image from the Old Testament, and that's the one of Nehemiah. Because, Nehemiah, we hear of Nehemiah after the exile, and folks went back, and Jerusalem was totally just destroyed, right? And the folks that were there traveled to Nehemiah, and I always say I'm a bit like the men that went to Nehemiah. They gave him the bad news. That's destroyed. The walls are down. The portals are gone. Everything's gone. Like, what are we going to do? And Nehemiah took it upon himself to ask. He was the cupbearer for King Artaxerxes. I never get that quite right. And when I meet him in the afterlife, he's going to say, "You say it this way." But and he went before the king this one day, and he said with a very sorrowful face. And the king asked him what was wrong, and he explained what was happening. And the king said, "Well, do you need to go? But you need to come back. But do you need to go?" And he said, "Well, yes." So he gave him safe passage. He gave him all that he asked for, that he thought he would need. And he let him have the time to go and look at Jerusalem to see what could be done. And Nehemiah's first sort of trip when he got there was, he didn't go to the leaders, he went around to see what was happening so that he got a sense of what was going on there. And then he went and presented to the people how he thought they could be doing things. And basically, it's almost like, grow where you're planted, work where you are, work side by side, and we'll rebuild. And it wasn't easy, because there are still those that thought, like, we've been here all this time, what's he coming in here telling us what to do? And you had those that were the Israeli, Jewish community, and they were saying, or they were charging fees to these poor souls that just came back, just trying to get life back together again, and we were taxing our own. And Nehemiah looked at that, and he said, "You can't be doing that. Like they've had all this oppression, and now you're doing it. You cannot do it." And of course, he didn't win friends, right? And they planned to kill him. They planned to upset what he was trying to do. And originally, everybody worked. He gave them all their pieces to do where they were. And they all worked. But then, of course, they heard that they were going to be attacked. And so some of them had to be on guard for those who were working. And I'd say to you that we need to have prayer support for the work we do. They're our guards for those of us that are out there working. And those that were the guards were always dressed, ready to do the work. And again, we need to ask ourselves, are we always dressed, ready to do the work? Some days I get up and I say to God, why, if you wanted this to be successful, did you choose me? Seriously, because I don't always have the words. I sometimes, you get up and you think, they know so much more than me. He's going to argue this, and will I be able to do it? But we have to trust in God, like Nehemiah trusted. And you know, that whole community did the job. They did do the job. Nehemiah was made aware that they were trying to kill him, you know, and he avoided all of that. It's just amazing how God helps those who call on him. And at the end, when they did rebuild, each in their own little places, this is only a little myopic micro-theologian of it, as your priests are going to tell you later. But nevertheless, it's how we are. You know, there in Guelph I am, building the wall of Jerusalem, like the wall for life, the protection for life. Here you are in Thunder Bay, building the wall. And at a certain point in the not too distant future, this country will love life and protect life. But we still have a lot to do. But I do feel, again, a bit like the men that brought the bad news to Nehemiah, because there is some bad news out there. You know, the numbers of abortions are horrendous again. The fact that we cannot get these figures is unbelievable. You know, what surprises me is that we have freedom of access to information on an international scale. There is a document that Canada signed on to in 1954. And it says that we should be, as the population, as the citizens of a country, they must, and they being our governments, provide the means to provide us with any information we ask for. And yet this government of Ontario, and our Canadian government isn't much better, it's literally passed this new Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, and another little one, that says, well, we'll give information about everything, but not about abortion. That is unconstitutional. And when you look at the international document, it says that that is absolutely a key piece of democracy. So just in case you didn't know, we're not living in a democracy anymore. I mean, you can find those things on the Canadian Stats Canada website. There it is, this great big list, freedom of information. And everybody breaks it. Because how do we follow the effects on women? The hurt, the damage that abortion does to women. How do we follow the effects on men? That's the whole newest thing that's coming up. If we cannot see those statistics, and I tell you, you can follow, because mostly when we used to be able to get big national statistics, it's changed a little now. It would come out in a thing called the Daily, and you would have, you know, this amount of iron ore shipped to such and such, this number of seeds or corn or bags of corn sold here, abortion statistics. As though it's nothing more than a number count. So our human life has been relegated to a commodity, even in our own statistics here in this country. So it sort of is unbelievable sometimes when you're dealing with the powers that be. So which is why we need our prayer warriors to just really try and break that down so that we can find those numbers and relate the truth to the folks out there. And I'll go through a little bit more as we go. Euthanasia is the other piece, of course, that we're, you know, the good news, bad news piece that we're having to deal with. And we have Quebec, you know, that has a commission on euthanasia, and they wish and want and are going to pass legislation that will allow doctors only to commit euthanasia. Not assisted suicide, euthanasia. And they are trying to circumvent our laws by saying now that to actually commit euthanasia is a medical procedure. That's the way they are trying to get around the laws that say euthanasia is against the law, assisted suicide is against the law. So they have got things in place to not prosecute doctors. Well, we heard this before. Well, I didn't, but those of you who were in Canada in the 60s and the 70s when things changed, this non-prosecution changed what people thought about abortion. and it will change what people think about euthanasia. If a doctor does it, it's got to be okay. I always think of more things to say, so I'll say them. Anyway, I was on a radio talk show once, well, several times, but this one particular time, with a lady who was an absolute right-to-die advocate. And we were talking about euthanasia and assisted suicide. And this man called in, and I mean, it broke my heart too, because he was obviously so upset, but he spoke about the day before he had just been, had to call the vet because his poor horse was really on its last legs and had to be put down. And he took a lot of time to explain how he stood beside the horse and rubbed the horse, and, you know, the injection went in, and it was the most wonderful, wonderful thing he'd ever experienced. You know, the horse died and that's it. Sad about that. And Ruth von Fuchs said, "I would love to be loved like that." And so I said, "Hey, I'll go get the saddle and ride you down to town." and the talk show host said, "Jakki, please, let's be civilized." So I said, "Yeah, I forgot we're talking about killing people, aren't we?" But you know, we're being related to animals and our death to animals. But as I say to our students when I talk to them, if you went home tonight and your mum put you outside in some sort of a kennel with a chain round your neck and fed you your dinner in a bowl, that would be abuse. So we don't live like animals, and we don't die like animals either. But you know, there's this strange turnaround in the world right now. Anyway, just to go on, time. So that you, again, please excuse me when I say so that you understand. I know you probably do, but just the work that I'm involved in is not always made big public. We do have a group working in Ontario, supposedly for women's health, who are trying to force Ontario to allow RU486 in our province. That's another chemical drug combination to abort children. They recommend that there be one hospital at least in every local health integrated network that provides abortions. It wasn't something I said, was it? No. Okay, good. And they want abortion treated as a core hospital service. And so we're sort of having a little bit of a tussle about that attitude, because as far as I'm concerned, killing one patient at the request of another should not be considered a core hospital service. And then with the new reproductive technology, I mean, you all know, what's happening there. It doesn't matter how many parents a child has these days. It seems 3 is better than 2, and it's unbelievable what is happening. So there's so much work that we have to do in all of those areas. And it needs prayer. It absolutely needs prayer. And I would take you back again that we are in an absolute battle for world views. Where there's a collision course going on, and we are being, I think, hammered into silence a little for all the values that we hold, because everything that we uphold is then said to be hate speech about what somebody else thinks, right? Well, I do believe that marriage should be between a man and a woman, and I'm in Canada, and I ought to be able to say that without somebody being desperately offended all of the time, right?
Yeah.
And I absolutely believe that parents have the right to decide whether their child is going to be taught a certain amount of sex education. That isn't up to the school. Our children are our children, and they should have our values. And no matter what our new premier says, again, I think we need to go back to this old idea of praying that God will send angels, and keep them awake for once, because if they can't sleep, they won't be able to think. Mind you, that's probably what the problem is. They're not sleeping well enough, they're not thinking. But they are not our guardians. They are not our keepers. And we really, really, really have to start fighting back for some of this stuff. I was saying to them this morning at Birthright, I don't know if you saw, but there was a massive, great, well, I guess what would you call it? They were trying to demean the crisis pregnancy centres out in BC. Did anybody see that about 6 months ago? CBC did this great big undercover thing into the crisis pregnancy centres. And these are our Christian crisis pregnancy centres. And they were trying to make out that they were telling lies to women. And that they were not telling them the truth, because they were trying to explain to them that you have a child in your womb. And this little one's heart beats here. And the brainwaves start there. And those little fingerprints are there at 9 weeks. Well, I mean, they were having the vapors that you would tell women these things. Well, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you explain to women that this is not just a nothing? That when you make this decision, it's forever. You are forever a mother of a child that is dead. It's not, you can't go back to nothing. So those world views, we really have got to just... Oh, I wish Joan of Arc was here sometimes, I do. But we do have to get the fighting spirit. We have to be the church militant in the good ways of all of that. And we have to be human rights. Don't let anybody say to you, this is just a religious issue. No, it isn't. Women and the men that have faith see it. We see it. But this is so definitely a human rights issue. When you can declass, as Mr. Woodworth told us, a whole class of human beings and say they are not. I mean, what is happening in our world? So there's loads. And they're even trying to improve us. Did you know that? Nanotechnology and all this new biology, because we don't work as hard as we could if we had these nanobits going around us, and we wouldn't need to sleep so much, and we'd be able to think much clearer if we had that. So there is also, and again, in certain circles, people think I'm nuts, but I think we have to also make the case for the wonder of human life now, because there is this whole thing that they like to call transhumanism. I mean, I don't want to get into that because it will make your hair go white. Well, not mine because I don't get it coloured, but it would make your hair turn white to see what they're trying to do. So there's so much for us to get on with. And even in the last few months, once again, I don't know how much you've seen, but they were, I think it was March. It may even be a year ago. Let me take a look so I know. It was March. Okay, Jakki, right now. And an article was written called "Something Deadly This Way Comes." And it was regarding an article in the Journal of Medical Ethics by two professors. And they were saying that you can actually make the case for killing a newborn because it's not different to the child just before birth. So there's really no case. So if you missed the fact that this child had a disability while it was in the womb, that shouldn't be a reason to stop you killing the it outside of the womb. And this was written. I mean, you can think that maybe people would sit and whisper these things, but this was written in a journal of medical ethics of all. I mean, you think it might be written in some mad journal, but a journal of medical ethics making the case that the moral status of an infant is equivalent to that of a fetus. That is, neither can be considered a person in a morally relevant sense. I mean, this is where they're going. It's really, actually to me, it's very frightening. because it's worrying, because we see it at this end, and now we're going to see it at the other end too. So, and if they're looking at me, they'll probably see it in the middle as well. But nevertheless, so we being Alliance for Life, started a website last year, and I've been woefully neglectful of it because there's only me in the office, and I just can't do everything these days, much to, I know, everybody's surprise. I'm not Wonder Woman. I try to be, but I'm not. But anyway, we looked at the whole history of what's been going on in Canada. And we looked at the temporary injunctions that are now 19 years old. All those bubble zones around everywhere? Nobody has the courage to address those. Nobody. So our constitutional rights as pro-lifers are offended where those bubble zones are, because we should be able to walk anywhere in this country, gather, say what we want to say, whether they like it or not. They're still in place. The media, Joseph, wherever he is, always distorting what we say, always distorting the facts, or ignoring us, which means we don't do anything, or the public don't hear that anything's going on. So there's a whole area there to address. The universities, you had it here. I can't believe this union here. I mean, you should have heard the excuses they give, because what I do, of course now it's on tape. You're not going to show this to the other side, okay? But what I've done with some of the universities, thank God for National Campus Life Network, but I often will call in and I'll say that I am who I am, Jakki Jeffs with Alliance for Life Ontario, and I'm just trying to get a handle on exactly what's happening. We're a pro-life organisation. We want to understand what's happening. And I say to them that I'm going to speak to our legal department in the afternoon, which I am. That's our president. He's a lawyer. Okay. So I say that I'll be consulting with our legal department later, and could you please outline, phone down. Nobody wants to talk to you. They want to be able to do what they want to do, make up, guidelines as they go along, and not be seen to be doing it. And so once again, there's a huge fight back with the Canadian Student Union and also the Ontario Student Union, because they are instructing these, little people that need a brain. I'm so surprised to see young people act in such communistic types of ways. Really, it's unbelievable at the universities. Anyway, so we have all this. I have a lot of fun going on as well as other things. Then we looked into the abortion. Those who are on the other side of this, that are always being asked, or whenever you see Joyce Arthur, who is like the face of the other side or the other opinion, she's always at an abortion clinic. And it just surprised me, so I did a little bit of digging. I just want to find this for you because I think it's interesting. I don't want to misquote it, seeing as I'm going to be on somewhere else, if I can find it. So I looked at their, I can't find it. So I looked at their website, and I looked at the membership of the abortion rights, Canadian Abortion Rights. They've changed their name, coalition. And out of 28 member groups, 14 of them were abortion facilities, like independent facilities, with three others that were independent things. So you got out of about 28 groups, you had about 17 that were in the industry. And so when we speak out, and there you are with the other side, it's the industry defending what it does and looking after its business. I mean, all right, yes, we obviously sometimes have, those who have the pro-abortion positioning, but for the most part, it's the industry we fight. Well, then that means we need to have a whole different attitude to that, actually. And then the fact, the legal blindness here, that there we have those children there, and that they are not considered until they're totally outside of their mothers to be human beings. I mean, once more, that's a whole load of challenging. and the contradictions in the medical profession. Do you know the Canadian Medical Association has just brought out, well, last year, a 3rd edition on mother and baby. And it talks about, what you need to do to be careful to, as you go through your pregnancy, and to look after your baby. And it also has a positioning that says abortion is between a woman and a doctor, and that's it. So how do you have such a contradictory? If I'm the same woman and I'm talking to you, and I'm going to carry this baby to term. Well, look after your baby. This is great. Eat like this. Work. Do that. But if I'm that same woman, I say, well, I'm not sure. Well, it's not a baby. It's not anything. And so we're in this ridiculous situation, whereas if the mother doesn't care for the baby, we don't care for the baby. And if she cares for it, we care for it. Well, darn it. I mean, you put that in other medical areas. Don't they know that this is a human life? Of course they do. But they've stood back from what they know because of abortion. And the press too. I mean, this is a whole other thing. And you may remember the young mum that had her baby in her parents' basement and took off her thong and strangled her baby. I don't know if you heard about that not too long ago. And the judge in that case, I mean, God bless the child, right? You know you have to help, and you don't know what was going through her poor head. All I do know is that she took that baby out and threw him over the fence into the neighbours. And the judge said, well, Canadians understand the strains on mothers. And I'm thinking, yeah, I know they understand the strains on mothers, but most mothers do not strangle their newborn children and toss that baby over. And it was as though the child was so incidental to everything else. And she was presented as a young woman with no help, and that was so untrue. She was she was with her parents. She didn't tell them. And as I say, God bless her. But our reaction should not be to just discard that tiny child as though it was nothing. She didn't want a toy and she threw it. Public health agencies, and I didn't go into it when I talked about Thunder Bay at the beginning, and I'm sorry if you're getting tired, but I will just have a few more bits to give to you. But they're another area of huge concern. If you want to go onto the public health, the Thunder Bay Public Health, please do so. Look up teen pregnancy, look up sexuality, and they tell teens on that public health site that you do not need to have your parents' permission to have an abortion. You do not need your parents' permission to go on to contraceptives. You do not need to tell everybody. You have a right to sexual activity. And then they provide links, and one of them is to the Canadian Sexual Health Federation. And on there you can hear everything you want to hear about how to have sex and who to have it with and how you do it. Now, that's part of the problem, because the public health have a mandate to actually reach our children. They don't want to reach you. They don't want to reach our children through you. They want to reach our children. And I know there's a lot of wonderful work, and forgive me if I don't mean to malign the whole thing. But in this area, with parental rights, with minors, we have got to challenge it, because it's part of the problem. They catch the kids, we don't, it seems. Yet. We will, hopefully. Anyway, I'm going to skip a little bit because I see your eyes getting tired, and there's so much I just want to put in, but I won't. But all I would like you to know is that every single day there is so much going on, and that's what I try and keep my finger on the pulse for us. Now, once again, I send emails out. Anybody that gets them is like... But what I like to do is share the knowledge, because it's important that we keep understanding how important what we do is. It really, really is. Even if you don't see all the things, it's so important. You may or may not have known that the last couple of weeks there was a huge United Nations meeting on the status of women. Now, I'm a woman, but I have to tell you, I'm sick and tired of hearing about women. I am. Everything is in reference to women. I want to hear about families, and I want to hear about freedom of, expression and protection and all those things. And God bless women. I love women, and I know that many, and in our country too, need a lot of help. But we are men, women, and children. It's all of us. But nevertheless, the status of women. They looked at again violence against women, and there was a whole number of organisations that were trying to push. God bless, Father. Pray for us.
I'm good at a good word for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Tell Francis I'm very pleased. And the US and the Nordic countries were trying to push that abortion was a violence against, not allowing abortion was violence against women. And they actually named it torture if you didn't allow women to have abortion. But I am glad to say that God ruled, because they went back to the Cairo conference, which is in 1994, and I actually almost got there, I didn't. But in the Cairo conference, the agreement was that, and I want to try and find it here, that it does not recognize, this was the committee from the Conference on Population and Development, does not recognize abortion as a right, and it should never be used as backup for contraception. Just to let you know, 55% of the women having abortions in Canada are pregnant while they're on contraception. Okay. But now they're saying that this agreement now extends to the morning after pill. And they actually managed to get in there that they agree, this United Nations status of women, with all these folks trying to mess it up, they agree in the rights of parents, in their role to protect their children from sexual education programs, early sexualization, and risky sexual behavior. So, we have another little piece to put to Ms. Wynne. You're offending the United Nations Status of Women conference. But it's helpful to have these things, although I do believe in our own national laws and not other laws reaching our laws. And the Holy See actually called again for what they call a radical solidarity, with families, with life. However you do that here, however you do it here. Another huge report that is looking, and it came out of the McGill University, looking at abortion. And basically what it's saying is that women who have had more than one abortions are at a higher rate of having children born early. And obviously children who are born early have greater rates of epilepsy, cerebral palsy, and all of those things. The studies are becoming more and more that actually support what we've been saying. Abortion is killing of children, it is harmful to women, it's harmful to society. So we just have to be patient to wait till these things come up and still keep the message going. So in the last little piece of this, I would just like to say to you what we're up to. And we have a wonderful media campaign going. I don't know if any of you have ever seen our ads, our television ads. We have, and this is you because Thunder Bay puts the money into it. We have these beautiful 30-second pro-life ads. And they are on for about 3.5 months every 2 years. If there's anybody here that has about $1 million, I can get them on in about 2 weeks. Right across Ontario. Well, actually, 300,000 would do. It really would. And every time they're on, my office, the phone rings off the hook. People are so cross that we should promote this message of life. They are just, how can you get that on? I said, well, you just have to raise the money and everything else. That's it. They take anybody's money, even ours, so that's good. And that's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing in the midst of all this stuff. We've got 2 committees going that I would love to tell you about, and one is about, it's called the To the Moon and Back is what I call it, but it's about when couples have adverse negative diagnosis, so their babies might be trisomy 18, 13, down, any of that. We're looking at the attitude of medical professionals in Ontario towards that, and it's horrendous, I have to tell you. We are not going to have babies, people that have Downs, much longer in our society, because we kill 95% of them if we find them in the womb. And if those professors have their way, we'll kill them when they're born, if we find them. So this committee is sort of looking at that and looking at alternatives and looking at how we can educate all of us so that then we can give a little package that you can use on the ground here in Thunder Bay to see what's happening here. So we need your help with that. And especially if you know anybody that's had any counselling regarding that, if they've been told, well, this is what's happening now, we suggest this or suggest that. We need the stories, so that's really important. Another one is the Finding Peace Committee, and this is really groundbreaking because it's for the first time in Canada we're looking at pulling together a conference on the effects of abortion on men. Because what we're finding is of what the people I've got on the committee, and they are long versed in this type of counselling for drug or other related things, drug and alcohol, that men particularly, this is so deep inside them, they don't even know what's causing their heartache. And they act out in very violent ways, very different to women, very self-destructive ways, to themselves, to their family, to everybody. And so it's, we're thinking it's about time that we actually looked at that. So that is going to be coming off within the next year, and I have some amazing people working on it. And we really need to pull in pastors and ministers and those that work with men, because I think we'll find one of the guys, Scott Miller, who works with me, he's found these men in the prisons, and you look at that connection. Then couldn't protect my baby. They didn't even know that's what it was. But you peel away the layers of how they felt, and suddenly there it is. So that's a huge thing. We've got 3 conferences this year. One is in Ottawa in June. One is in North Bay, November 1st and 2nd. One is in, I don't know where I am, but and one is in Windsor in October. And I want to convince this board to have one here. Have a day conference here. I will help you any way I can to get speakers and to come up really, really low cost level. We'll do it. But it's something that gets the churches on board. You can decide what you want to address, whatever's local that's best for you to address. Your membership, to get more membership and everything, and to just inspire people to get involved. The other little piece that we're looking at is, you may or may not have heard of the babies that were actually aborted and then lived and then died. There's a whole number in our country. This number is suddenly coming up. And there's sort of backtracking for people, and it's unbelievable. So we're following up on exactly what that was. So that child was aborted, it didn't die, it lived, so what did you do? Because it seems that the statistics of death certificates and things, nothing matches. So, there's a whole load of work there. And of course we've got this wonderful March for Life coming up. And you have these amazing people to help you do the work here. And I'm sorry if I've sort of overwhelmed you a little, but it's just so important to know all that's going on. And there's more that I could tell you, but I know I can't. But I will end with a little story about a young woman that has just happened, not here in Canada. And again, it's part of this new reproductive technology that we're involved with, or the world seems to be involved with. And this young woman was hired as a surrogate for a couple. And they gave her, she was in a bad position financially, and she saw this advertisement for a surrogate mother, meaning that, you'll carry the child for a couple. And so she answered it and got the job and was given 20,000. I think they give her 10,000 at the beginning, 10,000 at the end. And so during the pregnancy, of course, they're calling up, seeing how she is. I mean, I find this really strange, but nevertheless, are you sick today? And there's a really close sort of bond with them. And then there was an ultrasound, and the ultrasound found that the baby had a cleft palate and a cyst in the brain and a little heart problem. So the couple said, we want that aborted. And she didn't feel she could do that. And so they said, we'll pay you $10,000 to abort that baby. And she wouldn't. And they battered, and they just would not have the baby, won't give you any more money, want our money back. Anyway, this young woman, God bless her for making a bad decision in the first place, to say she would do it, but she birthed this little one and released him to a family that is used to looking after children with disabilities. There's no reason to kill a child because we don't want him or because he's not up to standard. But this is the attitude. Life has become a commodity. So it's up to us to keep this fight up. Go to the March for Life. Be here. Eat rotten pies. And do the work. Do the work. Whatever you see here, fight it. And I mean fight it in the most loving way, but fight it. Don't let the world bop you down. Because there is a thing they call the spiral of silence. And what they're saying is that we are being, we sit here and somebody says, I'm for life, and says everybody, right? Hate speech, this, that, or everything else. We get afraid. And even the church is getting quiet. We can't allow that to happen. We cannot. We have to keep fighting. So I'm going to encourage you to keep fighting. And then I'm going to give you two more of my I owe my mother's, and then I'll leave you alone. Okay. My mother taught me how to become an adult. If you don't eat your vegetables, you'll never grow up. That's funny. Come on, it is funny. My mother taught me foresight. Make sure you wear clean underwear in case you're in an accident. You all know that one, right? That's hilarious, isn't it? And then one of my favorites said, my mother taught me about justice. One day you'll have kids, and I hope they turn out just to be like you. But please keep the work up. And if you think you'd like to be on this board and you didn't say it, as president, she has the power to bring you into the board. So if there's anybody that I haven't put off particularly, and that you would like to go onto this board, be on it. And if not, pray every day. We need those guardians. And God bless them. Thank you all for sitting. It's a bit cool in here, isn't it? Yes. But for sitting and listening. Yes, ma'am. Anita.
I have a question.
Yes, Anita.
Canada Health has, have they, I know in the past, and I don't know if it has changed, but they do not say anything about, for instance, our province or any province supporting abortion. Does that still hold?
Yeah. Yeah, since 1998, since they threw out the abortion law, so now there is only provincial jurisdiction over abortion, right? It's considered a medical procedure. Right. So it's up to the province, and this is a whole other area we could do. Ontario says abortion is a necessary health care. So we need to provide the reason and tell them, no, it isn't necessary. I don't understand how abortion could be necessary and choice at the same time. Because if I have an appendix flare-up, I can't sit here and think, well, shall I go and have it out or not? And I don't mean to belittle that, but you can't, because it's necessary that that happens. You have something done about that. But there is an area still of criminal, because not criminal, of government involvement, because actually government are the biggest healthcare provider. The biggest healthcare providers, because they go in the prisons and the army, like that. So they are still involved, but there is that split in jurisdiction. But I think we have a case that we could make, should we want to our own province. And I mean, all of you must have seen like the sex selection business this week, right? M408. Did you see Mr. Warawa's motion that was just asking for government to, condemn sex selection? So they've deemed it non-votable, even though it actually fulfills the 4 guidelines for being a votable private member's motion. So pray for Mr. Warawa, because I think he will lose his career, because he is charging, he hopes he doesn't have to, the members with contempt of Parliament, because they are abusing the power. That committee that judged it non-votable are abusing their power. And God bless the man. So we need to stand behind him in prayer and in every way. Sorry, I didn't mean to go off. Is that that's what you...
Well, it's just that when you speak to politicians
Yes.
locally, they'll pass it on and say, well, let's speak about abortion. No, it's a federal thing.
No.
Or it's about monies, it's a federal thing. You speak to someone, federal. No, it's a
Totally.
federal
And I
thing.
tell you where you can get it. There's, or I can send it to you. I can send it to the board. It's a document called 890E-0, I think. And it talks about the whole progression of abortion in our country, right from 1967. And it actually mentions there the different jurisdictions of over-abortion of the government, the federal government and the provincial government. And absolutely and for sure, this is a provincial issue, because it's not in the criminal code anymore. It's not anything to do legal. It's all to do with medical, which makes it provincial. So you just have to tell them that. Don't let them go there. And if they do, it's because they don't know enough. So.
Just curious, there's a couple of programs around Rachel's Vineyard and Surrendering the Secret.
Right.
Do you know how prevalent they are in this province?
Not very, to be honest with you.
And has it been tried and failed?
No,
or?
I just think the people haven't come forward that are interested enough to do it. It
So
has to
there's
come through the church. I think it has to come through the church.
Virtually no post-abortion care, though, as far
Well,
as
there
a lay
is-
effort.
Project Rachel is in the Diocese of London, the Diocese of Hamilton. I don't know if it's here. Is it here? No, okay. They're creeping up because we have to get going. But I'm not good at creeping up. But as I said, I absolutely think that when we get this conference going, we're going to bring all of the ministries together that are anywhere in this province to this conference. But it needs people. It needs people to go to Bishop Crowley and say, this is the year of faith, and hey, this is the year of standing up in solidarity. And the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops have put out this new pastoral care on family and life. Wouldn't it be a great time to start Project Rachel? I'll do it, right? And do it, because all the help's there, all the support's there. Anyway, you're all freezing. I want a glass of wine, I should think. It's a bit early, isn't it? Yeah.